I wasn't trying to help anyone. I was trying to help my damn self get out of my suicidal thoughts and fall in love with my body. And I was helping people passively. I was like, holy shit, Nick, imagine if you focus your energy on doing more of this, you'll feel better about yourself. And I realized that as human beings, the suffering stops when we serve something greater than ourselves. I want you to meet your needs and I want you to serve yourself. But when you do something that's greater than just you, oh, there's a fucking superpower to that.
What's up, brother?
That's what you were.
That's what I went to.
Cooking up.
I was cooking up. I'm like, let me go. Hulk Hogan. Let me go. Hulk
You looked
Hogan.
at me and you had a smirk on your face. You're like, I know how I'm gonna intro this.
This is what I'm gonna do. Well, beforehand, we started down this rabbit hole of just the voices. Like, what's a good fucking voice to open with? And so the guy's name is Dan LaFontaine. He's the guy in the movies that he's the voice in a world, right?
This summer, Keanu Reeves stars in
Death Blow. So we want to bring on our guest here. We're gonna stop with the bullshit. We usually start off every episode, me and you fucking around, but we have a Jersey guy with us, and for us to interview a Jersey guy, born and raised on the Jersey Shore, that's a big deal for us. We've talked to a couple Jersey guys, and just a different level of respect that we have for people that grew up in this area, especially us. Growing up, me in Old Bridge, you in Millstone, at different points in our journeys. But our guest is Nick Santonastasso, and he is an entrepreneur, an author, a coach, a motivational speaker, a bodybuilder. And for the Building Men audience, you are going to listen to this episode and be like, oh my fucking God, this guy is one of the most inspirational men we've ever heard in our entire lives. Nick, welcome to the podcast, my man.
Yeah, thank you guys. Yeah, Jersey's in the house. Let's burn it down today.
Let's go.
Absolutely. So you went to, what was it, Shore Regional?
No, I went to Central.
Central,
Yes,
okay.
Central Regional, and so I lived in Bayville, New Jersey for 19 years of my life, but I moved. I got out of there.
So now you're out in Utah. Is that where you are now?
I'm in Vegas, but yeah, in a couple weeks I moved to Utah.
So we were introduced to you by Jamie Gruber. Jamie was on our podcast. We were interviewed on the Tribe of Millionaires podcast as well. What an unbelievable human being. I called him the bridge builder when I interviewed him, and he's just a really great connector of human beings. And when he interviewed you, we talked to you, he said, what a great connection. Both Jersey guys, both in this motivational speaking realm, and you work in schools as well, and you just help people all over the world. So let's just start with your experience in school. So you were born with something called Hanhart Syndrome, and only 12 people in the world, the year that you were born, 25 years ago, were born with this, and only 4 of those people that were born with that syndrome survived. And so talk to us a little bit about, being former educators, both of us, that experience growing up. So even the first couple of years of your life, talk to us a little bit about that journey initially.
Yeah, it's a great question. So, like you said, so I'm 25 years old. In 1996, I was born. I had about a 30% chance to live because most of the babies that are born with Hanhart syndrome are born with undeveloped organs and they can't breathe or eat on their own, and they later on pass away. And so when I was born, all my organs were 100% healthy, and the only thing that was affected were my limbs. So I'm born with no legs, one arm with one finger, and I was actually born in Flemington, New Jersey, North Jersey. And what's pretty interesting is my parents, at that time in 1996, let's just be honest, it was, would you agree, it's kind of like a bit taboo to have a kid born with no legs, one arm, or it wasn't out there like it is 2022, we kind of hid those type of kids, just being honest.
Yes.
And my dad was like, oh, fuck no, everybody's going to know who Nick is. We're not, everybody's going to know. We're not sheltering him. We're not keeping him in the house. Such bullshit. He totally went against the grain, which I can see where I get some of my going against the grain from. And so they actually, I went to preschool in Flemington, but my mom actually got a job at the preschool so she can always keep an eye on me. So she's like, I don't know how school's gonna go. I always want to be next to Nick. And so I think she was kind of like a teacher or a principal. I don't even know, but she was always there. Remember my mom always in preschool. And from there, as we moved into like first grade, they moved to the Jersey Shore. We moved to Bayville. And I think we had moved because of the education system. They were just looking for like a really great education system, probably going to different schools, whatnot. And so we landed in Jersey Shore in Bayville, and that's when I started first grade. And I think they just fell in love with meeting the principal and meeting the teachers, and they were very welcoming and they were very comfortable with the school. So I went there. And what's funny, and I don't usually share this, but there was a specific moment. It was probably like my first couple of days in school, and I didn't have any friends. And no one's ever seen a man or a kid with no legs of an arm. And so like I jump out of my wheelchair and I'm just like in the corner. I'm like bouncing this bouncy ball and I'm like throwing it up and catching it. All the kids are like, holy, they didn't say holy shit, but they were like, holy shit. Like this kid just like bouncing a ball. And I swear, I remember I was just bouncing a ball and everybody was crowded around me, just watching me. And I felt like really weird. And they were like, this is amazing. Look at the new kid. And like, I don't know. It's really weird. But anyway, I didn't realize a few things. I didn't realize I was different until probably like middle school. You know, like I didn't even notice like, oh, there's an aide pushing me and there's an aide following me around, or I didn't really get made fun of or maybe picked on as a young kid. The kids were really amazing to me. But as you get into middle school, I think we can all agree middle school and high school are the most judgmental times of our lives. And middle school and high school also when you get girlfriends and boyfriends. And that's one of the things that kind of set me off was I got into middle school and I started realizing I was like, well, everyone's taller than me. I don't grow. I got someone pushing me in class. They sit with me in class. I get to leave class 5 minutes early and show up to the other class 5 minutes early. Like, why do I get all these extra things? And there was a specific moment where I was on a school bus and there was a girl to the left of me and she was making fun of everyone on the bus. And she looked at me and she said, Nick, I don't even have to start with you. You're already too messed up anyway. Look at you. And as a 13-year-old kid, like your whole world comes shattering down. You know, it's like, wow, I really am different. And what's pretty interesting, and we can go into the brain and how the brain works, is like someone can say something to you and you start to believe that shit. And the truth is that every single one of us and every single one of you listening, the majority of the thoughts that are going through your head aren't your thoughts. You pick them up along the way. So along the way, someone told you, you're not good enough, and you started to believe that shit. Or someone told you, you can never make that team, and you started to believe it. Or you can never lose the weight, and you started to believe it. And so for me, based on that girl experience, I started to develop beliefs about myself that I was disgusting and that girls don't like a man with no legs of an arm. And I'll never go to my prom or my senior prom or my junior prom, and I'll never have a wife. And so cut me off whenever, but that was like the first taste of realizing how different I was and developing specific beliefs around women in my body because of what I was dealt.
And it's like the reticular activating system. It's what you see, you'll be attracted to. And if you're constantly seeing those negative thoughts in your head, you're going to believe that that's the truth. And I definitely want to get back into the middle school spot because you're a 13-year-old kid. You just want to fucking see a boob. You know, you want to grab a girl's boobs. That's what you want to do in middle school, right? But when you're recognizing that, I first want to talk to you about your parents, though, because the research that we did, we were like, what a fucking unbelievable set of parents that you had. There were so many parents. So I was a middle school principal for many years, and I had so many conversations, Nick, with parents around, one, trying to solve all the problems for the kids, trying to come in and solve all of their problems. And what you're doing is you're not allowing children to develop a sense of resiliency, a sense of perseverance, understanding that they are capable of so much more than what we're giving them the credit for. So talk to us a little bit about your parents and the lessons that you learned by them saying, like, all right, kiddo, here you go. You got this.
Yeah. That's a great point. And my mom had a brilliant title for her book, and was like, How We Raise an Adaptive Child in a Handicapped World. And what that means is you can have full body, but based on your upbringing, be handicapped, right? By parents doing everything for you, and you're not exposed. Like you said, it was beautifully said, right? And so there's a few things that my parents instilled in me at an early age, and how they did this was, I mean, the first thing, let's give a great example. The first thing that they did was they didn't tell any of my siblings that I was different before coming home. And so like they just came home with Nick wrapped up like little baby Jesus. And They put Nick down on the table or the couch and they unravel him, and here's a baby in a diaper with no legs of an arm. And my siblings were like, "Oh my God, he's so cute, and look at his hair," and blah 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 blah, because they never pre-framed or set stones like, "Hey, your son, your brother's a little bit different." Like they never did that, so that was just normal to them. Does that make sense? And so like it wasn't like, "Oh my God, he has no legs and one arm," and so they just loved me for who I was. So that was the first thing. The second thing was that my parents, and I don't know where they got this, right? I don't know where they got that calling to like, hey, let him fall on his face so he can build those muscles. But they would put my clothes in front of me and they would only give me verbal suggestions. Like, I mean, in the beginning, of course, when I was a baby, they'd put my damn clothes on me, right? But as I grew up, like, and they wanted me to learn, they would be like, okay, Nick, here's your shorts and here's your shirt and try it. And I remember like trying to fucking put on my shirt and get so pissed off and not understanding what they were doing. But I finally figured out how to put my clothes on, right? And so that at an early age helped me acquire the skill of being solution oriented, right? Is like focusing on the solution versus the problem. Now, consciously, my parents I don't know if they knew what they were doing, but when you look at the brain as well, most of your brain is formed and your beliefs and the way you look at the world between 0 and 7 years old, because you're in theta state, right? It's like the door to your subconscious mind. And so I fell on my face a bunch of times, figured out how to put my clothes on. The same thing, they moved me into the high chair and they would put a spoon there with some food and they say, okay, Nick, figure it out. I'd fucking flip the food up and drop it and finally figure out how to feed myself. But the other thing that they were instilling in me was I was okay with failure very early on, which is a game changer. Like I didn't run away from failure. Like I leaned into failure and it was a part of my day to day. It was like a best friend for me. It was like, yeah, things are going to be hard. They're always going to be hard. So like the frame or like the filter that I saw life was like, I'm not going to get everything right away. It's not going to happen. There's going to be falling down. There's going to be challenges, but I did have a chip on my shoulder and I'd fucking persist until I got something. Like I was very persistent. And so I developed a great relationship with failure. I became solution oriented. And then the third thing was that I just developed a great relationship with rejection because I got rejected doing everything. Rejected putting my clothes on, getting on a couch, feeding myself. But I knew that on the other side of rejection, there was going to be some sort of victory.
So now, Nick, you're on the bus and there's that fucking girl who's just ripping into everyone. And you almost, at this point in your life, you probably feel bad for her because imagine the shit that she was dealing with, that she needed to lash out in such a negative way to get a need met within herself by pulling other people down. But it didn't help you at that moment. That as developmentally at 13 years old, we're not thinking, oh, I feel sorry for you right now because you're probably dealing with your own traumas. Nevertheless, you're at this moment. So take us from there, Nick, until you make the big decision. I don't want to spoil it for the audience, but when you decide you wanted to wrestle in high school, so take us on that little journey there.
Yeah, beautifully said. Because now, and I want to get into that. Now I can look at her and see her with compassion, but as a 13-year-old kid, there's no compassion. Fuck you, right? And so what happens in the brain as well as a negative event is going to happen, and you usually stack. Right. And so you can stack in a negative way. And so, for example, if you've ever woken up on the wrong side of the bed, you notice everything that's wrong in your life. That's just how the brain works. It's designed to see all the negative. Right. And so when that girl said that to me, my thoughts were, she's right. I am disgusting. Right. Girls don't like me. I'll never get a job. I'll never have a girlfriend. I'll never go to prom. I'll never have sex. Like all these different things started stacking and stacking and stacking. And that led me to a deep, dark, negative place. But what's pretty interesting is humans change for two reasons. It's pain or pleasure. But oftentimes humans will run away from pain faster than they'll run towards pleasure. Right. And so I experienced enough pain, which she gave me. I'm grateful for it now. I can see it now. But she gave me enough pain to the point where I wanted to love myself. I wanted to feel confident. I wanted to be an athlete. I wanted girls to like me. Like this was like my main driving force now that I look back on my life. And my older brother, who he passed away about a year and a half ago. But I wanted to be just like my brother in the sense of he was an amazing wrestler. And as you guys know, in Jersey, wrestling's like a religion. And now that I look at it, I'm like, hey, it wasn't that bad because everyone's a fucking stud in Jersey when they wrestle. So it wasn't really that bad. And so I wanted to be just like my brother. But going into high school, all my best friends are wrestlers. And so they were like, Nick, why don't you try wrestling? And I said, I can't, my arm. And for those that are seeing this or those that are listening, my right arm was developed right before the elbow. So I didn't have an elbow. And it was 5 inches longer than it is now, and my bone was growing faster than my skin. So it was always super sensitive growing up. Like I always used to hide it. I was very sensitive. If I hit it, I would get like, I'd cry. It was just very, very difficult. And so that I was like, I can't wrestle my arm. But then my solution orientedness kicked in, and I started like marinating on the idea of becoming a wrestler. I was like, man, if I could become a wrestler, I'll get a girlfriend. If I become a wrestler, like I'll be a badass, and I'll be a badass athlete, when they told me I couldn't. And so I came home one day and I sat both my parents down. I said, Mom and Dad, I want to become a wrestler. And my mom was like, oh, hell no. You ain't going to become a wrestler. Wrestling's the most physical sport. God forbid you hit your arm, your bone comes through your skin. What are you going to do then? And I looked at my parents and I said, is there any way we can cut my arm off? And they were like, what? And I was like, yeah, I know it sounds crazy, but like if we cut my arm off, I'll feel better. I'll be able to wrestle. And so they took my solution. And now that I look at it, the reason they took the solution so quickly, because from the outside, they look like crazy parents. But when I was born, they never seen anything like me. And the doctors wanted to do some crazy things to me. They wanted to cut my finger in two so I could have two fingers. They wanted or there was an option where let's just cut his finger off because it's useless. He won't be able to do anything with it. Or let's put rods in his legs and bone lengthen him every day and have him sit in a bed for 6 months so maybe he can have prosthetics one day. Or even it's just all those different things that they wanted to do. And my parents said no to everything because they said that's Nick's choice and he doesn't have a voice yet, which I thank my parents for that. So now, 14 years old, do you see now it makes a lot of sense where it's like Nick's in pain and he presented the solution. Let's fucking do it.
Right.
So I was 14 or 15 years old and I went in. And I remember I looked at the doctor. I said, Doc, I need to be able to beat someone over the head with this arm when I come out. I got to become a wrestler. Like, make sure I'm good. And so what they did was they lasered 5 inches of the bone off. They did a skin graft where they pull extra skin from my shoulder, pull it over the bone so I could have some cushion. And I remember I woke up. I go back to school with a cast. I'm the happiest kid that just cut his arm off. It was the best day of my life. And that was the pursuit of becoming a wrestler. And so you can cut me off here, but understanding that, one, I was solution oriented, but now I can be grateful for my pain because it led me to such fucking resilience and wanting to become a wrestler to do amazing things.
Absolutely. And you hear this story all the time about Ronnie Lott in the middle of a game with his pinky got dislocated or fucking jammed up, and he got broken,
and the only way for him to go back in the game is he couldn't go back in the game, or they could cut it off.
Yeah.
And so he was like, just cut it off, and everyone's like, holy crap.
And so the other human being in the entire world that could look at Ronnie Lott and be like, scoop of vanilla, scoop of chocolate. I cut my fucking arm off, motherfucker. Like
5 inches versus,
So talk to us now a little bit about your wrestling career. So now you're on the mat, and we both played high school and college sports. So we get the idea of competition, being involved in the community, being accepted in that way, but that brotherhood feel. So talk to us just a little bit about your wrestling career. What were there lessons learned from it, being a part of that team?
Yeah. So like you said, I was grateful enough. Maybe it's the trickling down because I had older siblings, but by the time I got into high school, like, my friends were the scary friends. They were the big bad motherfuckers. And so I didn't really get bullied but to be honest, like I had a great upbringing. Now that I look at it and I focus on the good, like I had a great high school time. But anyway, getting into the wrestling room, one of the greatest gifts my friends gave me was, and I helped them give it to me, was I was like, you got to beat me up good. Like, don't hold back on me, because if you hold back on me in practice and I go out and get my ass kicked, I'm going to be even more pissed. So beat me up here so I know the intensity and what it feels like. And so asking you shall receive, I got my ass kicked all damn day in practice. I remember there was, a specific drill where you would get with the people around your weight class, and it was called Shark, and you would be in the middle, and you would take turns, and everybody would come at you and take you down. And the only way that you got out of the damn circle is if you got 5 takedowns. Well, guess who didn't get fucking 5 takedowns? The guy with no legs and one arm. And so here's Nick, and I'm fucking in the drill for 40 minutes. And I remember that was like a breaking point for me where like I cried, and anyway, but it was good. But a few things. You have the brotherhood, but also it was a mutual benefit, because if we're getting our ass kicked and it's like 100 degrees in the wrestling room and we're like dying, and someone looks over to me and I crack a smile, they're like, man, like, what the fuck am I complaining about, But they also fed me with like, Nick, keep going, like making jokes or just like keeping me going. But my whole thing was I wanted to be a part of something. I wanted to be involved. Prior to that, as a freshman, one of my best friends, like, we did bowling together, but bowling didn't cut it for me. I was like, I want something more intense. Shout out to all the bowlers. I'm not hating on you, but I was like, I wanted something more intense. And so we moved to wrestling. And so I was in a brotherhood. I was fucking labeled as an athlete. I saw my brother be a badass wrestler. So me adopting the identity as a wrestler, I just felt like a badass. Even if I wasn't even good, I felt like a stud, just because I was a part of it. But also, it showed me how far I could push myself physically and mentally, but also we get massive benefits from moving our body, from changing our state and changing our physiology. And so even the endorphins releasing, that made me feel good. And so all of those things were a combination of Nick's confidence and snowball starting to really roll. And my junior year, I was a JV wrestler. And then my senior year, the stars aligned and the 106 pounder failed because of his bad grades. And guess who was ready to take that varsity spot? Your boy. And so I moved into the 106 varsity spot, and I was 2-17 my senior year. So I got 2 real wins, which fucking fired me up. But there was a moment, and I want to share this and then we can digress. But there was a moment where I came off the mat after getting my ass kicked. And this mom came up to me crying. I'm like, holy shit, what did I do wrong? And she said, Nick, I want to thank you. And I was like, for what? Your entertainment? Like, I entertained you out there? And she's like, no. Like, she said, my daughter's right there. And she's shy. And she never wanted to do a sport. But seeing you out there, she's like, Mom, I want to try something. And she goes, I want to thank you. And at that moment, I felt the fuzzy feeling inside. I didn't know what it was called back then, but I felt the fuzzy feeling inside called fulfillment, which we're all chasing. Yeah. We're all chasing fulfillment. You may think it's the cars or the houses or the watches, but it's how it makes you feel. You really want the fulfillment. And so I had a few breakthroughs. The one thing was like, ooh, I like this feeling. I want to do more of that. But the second thing was I wasn't trying to help anyone. I was trying to help my damn self get out of my suicidal thoughts and fall in love with my body. And I was helping people passively. I was like, holy shit, Nick, imagine if you focus your energy on doing more of this, you'll feel better about yourself. And I realized that as human beings, the suffering stops when we serve something greater than ourselves. I want you to meet your needs and I want you to serve yourself. But when you do something that's greater than just you, there's a fucking superpower to that.
Absolutely. That is a great line, by the way. And you mentioned, Nick, being on the mat and everyone's like, fuck, we got to do this. And they look over and they see you smile. And so there's this, I was thinking about the way to phrase this question because I'm so curious about this. Do you feel an inherent pressure to have that fuzzy feeling, to know that people are looking at you with such motivation? Do you feel pressure because of that? Or is there times you're just like, fuck, just leave me alone. I just want to fucking just deal with my shit today. I don't want to be this motivational guy. So do you feel pressure around that, knowing that people are looking to you for motivation all the time?
No. That's a great question. No, because a few things is what you see here is what you get, but also I'm extremely authentic, and I'll tell you when I'm having a shitty day. I'll come on Instagram Live, be like, I'm fucking having a terrible day, and this is how I'm going to get through it, because I'm a human, right? But also is that the other thing, the training never stops in becoming a great human being and doing personal development. The training never stops, but there's 3 parts of the brain. You have 3 brains. You have your thinking, you have your doing, and your being. I'm at the point where I be. This is who you see, and I've done so many things with repetition. Is what you see is what you'll get. But I also don't have pressure because I want people to see all sides of me. I want you to see the great sides of me in the highlight reel, but I also want you to see the fucking dark shit that I'm going through, so you know that you're not alone. And so I don't have pressure because I'm extremely authentic and transparent, and I don't think I have to put up this like thing. It would be one thing. I'd probably feel pressure if I was like fake as fuck. Right. And like on the outside, like I'm positive and I got a great life, and when in reality I fucking hate myself, that would be a totally different story, and then I'd feel pressure. And so I don't think you feel pressure if you're just really transparent and open. Love that.
And your development, your parents, like we mentioned before, did such an amazing job helping you develop that sense of perseverance, sense of resiliency. I'm also wondering your development as a man. We talk a lot on this podcast about where did we learn our lessons around masculinity? How did we develop this sense of what it truly means to be a man? So I'm sure you learned a ton of it from your parents, from your father. Were there any other people that helped you develop that sense of masculinity? And what is your definition of masculinity? What does it truly mean to be a man?
It's a great. I love this because I don't usually get asked this question, so thanks for that. Now that I think of it, what I what I saw from my dad, now that I look back at it, what I saw from my dad was someone who fucking worked hard. Like my dad, like when I woke up, my dad was already at work. And then when I got home from school, he wasn't home yet. And then he got home. And then, it was change out of the work clothes and then cook for the family, or take care of the kid. Like, and my mom was there too, but she worked late as well. But what I also got from my dad was I always saw him spoil people. Like, and I see where I get it from. Like, my dad's the guy who picks up the tab without anyone knowing. My dad's the guy who will take the shirt off his back for someone else. And so I learned that of like a man's someone who steps up and takes care of people even when it's hard, or lets his people eat before he eats. That's kind of the thing that I saw, and I think he got that from his dad as well. And I think I got the toughness and the gritness from my brother as well, because he was just a fucking bull. Like he wanted to work a labor job because he just liked working hard, like just like wanted to pick things up and put them down kind of thing. But what's pretty interesting, and I want to go down this, is this is so cool. Now that I see it, there is moments in my life where I felt like I wasn't a man. I wasn't man enough. And because of what I saw. Now, this is very interesting. I'm having this shift right now is, like, I don't know, seeing my brother fight. I was like, well, I can't protect anyone. I must not be a man. Like, how can I protect someone if I can't fucking throw up the dukes? Like, I can wrestle, but I can't fight someone. If I'm honest with myself, anyone can beat me up, right? So how can I be a man, Nick? Or, even things like you can't carry a girl's books to her locker. You can't open a door for her. You can't do things for women that men can do. Like, you're not a man. Does that make sense? And so I felt like maybe I don't have this masculinity, and I didn't, and I was finding myself, right? And then there was specific mentors in my life that showed me what it was to be an entrepreneur, and a CEO, and what it's like to read books and to write goals and to fucking go after the things you want. And that was great. But I'm 25. My personal development journey probably started at 20 or 21. And I've been able to learn from some amazing people. And so now if you ask me what a man is I think a man is someone who steps up and leads and speaks his truth. That's one thing. Too many motherfuckers are scared to speak their truth because not everyone's going to agree with their message. And I spent too many years trying to speak in a way where everyone loves Nick doesn't fucking get you anywhere, And so understanding that, step up into your your manness, whatever you want to call it, and speak your truth, whatever you feel. And if people don't align, that's okay. They don't need to align. But the people that do, they'll be raving fans and they'll ride or die with you till the death, right? And so that's the one thing that I learned. The also thing that I learned is, as men, we've been conditioned that vulnerability is weak. We've been conditioned to not talk about our problems. Even if you look in society, it's like you start to share your problems and they're like, dude, you're a man. Fucking nut up. Just deal with it. And then what happens? You suppress it, and then one day you fucking pull out a gun. Or then one day you have suicidal thoughts. Or then one day you snap on someone and you don't even know where it came from because you condition your whole life that don't cry. Big girls don't, or, big boys don't cry. Right? Like, we get conditioned at an early age that we're not supposed to talk about our problems because we're man. And that's fucking bullshit. That's my view on it. And so what a true man is someone that can step up. If you're in a relationship with a girl or wherever it is, you say, hey, I'm feeling insecure about this. Can we work through this? Or, hey, I need reassurance. Can you give me some reassurance? Rather than having a fucking ego and walking around and trying to have this big dick syndrome. No, we all hurt. We all have insecurities. We all have doubts. We all have fears. But a real man steps up into that uncertainty and works through it. A real man communicates his insecurities. A real man communicates in a way where not everyone needs to see your sides, but you can communicate and be civil. That's what I think a real man is being comfortable with all aspects of you and not putting on this facade that you're always hard, because there's times to be hard and there's times to be soft. There's times to be a dick and there's times to be compassionate. Does that make sense? And so that's what I think a real man is someone who's in tune with his masculinity and his feminine parts.
100%, dude. We couldn't have said it any better.
We talk about that all the time. Exactly what you just said right there.
And it's so much more challenging to look at the fucking the shit that's inside of us. It takes so much more strength to be vulnerable. And you're absolutely right, Nick. You need to base your masculinity on things that cannot be taken away from you. It's one of the pillars of the things that we talk about with building men. It's not about how good of an athlete you are. It's not about how many girls you can bang. It's not about how many zeros in your bank account. If you base your masculinity on things that are intrinsic, things that cannot be taken away, character traits, then you're onto something. Then it doesn't matter if you can't fucking fight a dude or if you can't open the door. Like, then it's something that comes from fucking inside of you. So, Nick, you mentioned you started that personal development journey in your early 20s, 20, 21 years old. So take us from now. You're on the mat. That the mom comes up to you. You realize, like, there's this fucking funny, fuzzy feeling inside. It's not the kind of fuzzy feeling that you get when you're, rubbing around on your I don't know why I'm looking at you right now.
Stop staring me in the eyes as you're talking about this fucking...
Not that kind of fuzzy.
All right.
I
got it. Stop looking at me. Fuck.
that feeling where you're like, I'm doing something to benefit the world, to create this level in society that people are looking at me and I can give back, and my journey, it's not done in vain. It's done because I'm going to help the world become a better place. So take us from that spot on the mat to now you're getting into this personal development world. Yeah,
great question. And I love what you said is like finding that masculinity in things that people can't take away from you. And they're not external. Oftentimes we think it's the external that's going to fix us, and it's such bullshit. The internal fixes the internal, and then the external follows, right? And so after the whole wrestling thing, that was a time where the app Vine came out, and Vine was an app where you can post 6-second videos. And so I was like, man, I want to create a way. I knew what it felt like to be suicidal, depressed, unconfident, not comfortable in my skin. And I knew other people were going through the same thing. So I was like, man, if I can create something where people can look at me and go, wow, look how happy that guy is. Maybe I could be a little bit more happy in my situation. That's what I wanted to do. And that's when I created the idea where I was going to dress up as a zombie and scare people in Walmart. And, that was, I got very famous for that my senior year of high school. And that was like a big, that fed the ego and the significance a little bit, because I would show up to wrestling matches and the opposing team's cheerleading team would want to take pictures with me. I was like, oh, I'm fucking onto something here, and so this is some good stuff. But anyway, I realized quickly that like the pictures and the fame and the stuff like doesn't fulfill you. There was still a gap. But I also realized that like I didn't want to be known as a prankster my whole life. Like there was bigger purpose for me. And so that's when I had moved to LA. Long story short, I moved to LA for like a pranking thing, and it didn't go the way that I wanted to go, and I went broke, and I moved back in with my parents into their basement. And so when I moved back in with my parents into the basement, I was like, all right, what's bigger and better? What can I do? And I was like, well, I'd never been in super good shape before. If I could become a bodybuilder, no one's ever seen that. I'll be able to monetize it and build a big following because it's never been done before. And so I told my parents, I was like, I'm going to become a bodybuilder. And with bodybuilding, it's interesting because you can't change your body overnight. And so I can cast this vision, but my parents don't really know what the fuck's going on or how long it's going to take. So it was really difficult to sell my parents on my vision. I was like, just give me some time. Let me live in the basement and get in really good shape and start posting videos and just like, trust me here. And it got to the point where I started to build a following in the fitness industry, which, by the way, any whether it's a man or woman listening, like one of the greatest things that you can do is just work on your body because it makes you feel fucking good. And that's another thing that they can't take away from you is you go into the gym, 45-pound plate is always going to be a 45-pound plate. It's never going to cheat on you. It's never going to leave you. It's never going to switch up on you. And so that's one thing that could be stable in your life is going into the gym and, working on yourself. And there got to the point where he wasn't a mentor at the time, but someone reached out and was like, hey, man, really love what you do. I own a meal prep company. Would you be willing to just come out to Tampa, Florida and check out my facility? I'll host you. And it was a stranger, but I looked at his page and he's a really successful dude. I'm like, I'm going to do this. And so I told my parents and they're like, you could do it. And so I flew out to Tampa and I fell in love with Florida. I'm like, oh my God, I don't have to wear a shirt anytime. The weather's amazing all year round. Like, this is amazing. But also, and I don't know if y'all noticed this in Jersey, but there wasn't a very big bodybuilding industry, at least where I was in Bayville. It wasn't like a big bodybuilding industry. And so when I went to Tampa and I visited, there was like all these people that were in shape and they love health and there was gyms everywhere and it was like so uplifting. And I was like, I got to go here. And so I moved to Florida. I moved to Tampa to pursue bodybuilding, and I was getting mentored by that guy. And talk about a man figure in my life. Like, he got me into reading. He got me into goal setting. He got me into journaling, all this different type of stuff. And so from there, I did a bodybuilding competition where it was like a 12-week preparation, and I got super shredded, and I took third in that bodybuilding competition against full-bodied guys. They didn't judge your legs, of course, and so it was only like your torso up, and so I had a pretty good torso up, and so I competed in that. I don't even know where I'm going with this, but that was my shift from going from bodybuilding to Tampa, and that's when I started my personal development kind of journey, reading books and stuff. And I think that's also where I started speaking, where that mentor of mine was like, hey, just come speak to my group, and I didn't even know what to say. He's like, just share your story. And I started sharing my story. But also, because that I moved to Tampa, 2 weeks into moving to Tampa, one of my mutual friends was like, hey, I'm having a few buddies over at my house. I just want you to meet them. There's some entrepreneurs. And I went to this mastermind, and everybody was sitting around in the circle, and it got to my turn, and they're like, what's your story? I'm like, oh shit, I got a long story. And so I started sharing my story. And at the end, there was this Russian guy, and he goes, one day you're going to be on stage with Tony Robbins. And I was like, who's Tony Robbins? I'm 20, 21 years old. And I started talking to this guy. He's like, I feel compelled to help you. He's like, I do real estate, but I want to help you. He's like, I'm going to work for you for free. And if you like the work we do, maybe one day we'll start a company together. And 4 years later, I'm on a world tour with Tony Robbins, and I have two big brands, and I speak all over the world, and we can get into all that. But that was just a small piece.
It's so funny. I listened to the podcast you're on with Jamie Gruber, and the Tony Robbins thing resonated with me as I left being a principal. I rolled the dice, gambled on myself, and there was a time during COVID when the world shut down. And so I went from making a good salary as a principal to making zero, going through a divorce, and I was in this moment where I was like, holy fuck, what did I do here? So when I started the podcast up, somebody asked me, where do you see this going? What to you is success with it? And I've been a student of Tony Robbins forever, and I said, you know what, I'm going to be on stage with Tony Robbins one day. That's how I see success. And the fact that you're now working with Tony Robbins, we've talked about it a couple times on the podcast, and we actually joke about how fucking big his hands are when he claps. It's like fucking like, we were like, it's like catcher's mitts. Yeah, and we're like, holy shit, somebody analogized it to 5 unripe bananas.
That was me.
That was you. That was you with DeSanti. That's really funny. It was just fucking amazing that we're talking to you right now, and that's where your life headed. I also don't want to miss the opportunity to just, again, congratulate you and your parents for when you said, you know what, I'm going to fucking become a bodybuilder. They're like, all right, go ahead. Yeah, I'm just thinking, like, what is off the table? If you're like, you know what, Mom, I'm going to juggle chainsaws. That's what I'm going to fucking do. And they're like, yeah, go ahead.
They let you never, like, get rid of that creative mindset, like that child mindset where nothing is impossible. Everything is for the taking out there for you. And that allowed you all the space to do whatever you wanted to do, which is so cool.
Yeah. I like how you said the little kid, too, because I think along the way, we suppress that little kid, and we forget about that little kid, which, by the way, too, even if you're working through traumas, like, it's still that little kid that needs healing, going back to that little kid. But also, like, as adults, like, we leave things in our childhood that we really enjoyed. And the reason why I say is, like, you should go inward on that and, like, ask yourself, even those that are listening, is like, what is something that I did as, like, a young kid that I don't do anymore that made me really feel really good? And the reason why I share that is because we talk about flow state, right? Like flow state is like where you're in your element, where there's no judgment, there's no fear. You're just creating, you're living. You don't even know where time went. Maybe you sat down one day and you started writing and you looked up and it was 4 hours later. You just went into flow state where, like, time just goes by. But a great way to access flow is to go back and do the things that just make you feel good as a kid. Maybe for you it was like wrestling. Maybe for you it was volleyball. Maybe for you it was video games. Like, there's specific things that I bring into my adulthood that I had in my childhood that make me feel really good. But also, your greatest ideas will come from moments of leisure. So that's why you get good ideas when you're taking a shit. That's why you get good ideas when you're in the shower, because you're not thinking about business or anything and something just hits you, right? And so you, like, for all of you listening, for those people that are tied up in business, like, make sure you're scheduling time to do things that you really enjoy, because that's when you're going to get really creative and get in the flow.
You talk a lot about this idea of matrix therapy. Talk to the audience a little bit about what that means.
Yeah. Oh man, the brain is a powerful thing. And so I want people to look at the brain right now as like two parts, right? You have your conscious brain, and then you have your unconscious brain. And what's pretty interesting, let me geek out a little bit, is a lot of people label they say subconscious. But subconscious would imply that it's less than the conscious, which is total bullshit. The unconscious is actually way more powerful than the conscious brain. So I call it the unconscious, right? And so the unconscious, I want you to look at your brain as a glacier, and the tip of the iceberg is the tip of the glacier is your conscious mind, and then everything under the water is your unconscious mind. That's where everything's going on. Your beliefs, your filters, your traumas, your fears, all of that's going on in the unconscious. And your unconscious is so fast that it can detect a threat before your conscious mind even puts its pants on. That's how fast your unconscious mind is. It should be the VIP of your life. And so talking about matrix therapy is the brain, especially with meditation and visualization or going inward, your brain cannot decipher what's real and what's visualized. It's called neuron mirroring. So like the greatest athletes in the world, the greatest fighters in the world, when they visualize, the brain doesn't know whether they're really in a fight or not. And that's why they can do it with repetition, and they can visualize something. It's called mental rehearsal. They can do it so many times. Like, for example, going out on Tony's stage, one of the biggest stages, it was 15,000 people. I was kind of scared, And so what I did was, every day going up to that, I mentally rehearsed. I was going to hop or walk out on stage, and I was going to look left. I was going to look straight. I was going to look right. So when reality caught up and I got on that stage, it wasn't my first time getting on that stage. It was my 45th time, because I rehearsed it so many damn times. So going into matrix therapy, what matrix therapy really is the process of you going into trance, which, by the way, you're in trance all the time. The news got you in trance. TV's got you in trance. We probably have you in trance right now, where you're just listening, right? And all trance means is that you can follow directions. And so it's not a bad thing. You can use it for bad, but you can use it for good. And so I can put myself in trance, or I can put someone in trance. And matrix therapy is calling forth the unconscious mind to talk. And this is difficult for some people, is because your conscious mind doesn't want you to change. And your conscious mind, so for example, if I asked you a question, there may be a first instinct response, but your conscious mind will go, don't tell him that. Like, don't tell him that, because then he knows that, or blah, 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 blah. Because if you're going to change, or you're going to shift, or you're going to release something, that means a part of you needs to die, and people don't want a part of them to die. That's why they hold on to it, right? And so I have to build a relationship or get into a flow of things with a person enough where their unconscious and their conscious mind trust me, to the point where whatever flashes, just say it, right? And so matrix therapy would be something where I can have you lay down, or you sit down and you close your eyes, and I could get you to start talking, and then I'll go, go to the first time where you experience anger, and there'll be a flash, and your brain will be like, this time. And if you surrender, you'll say, it was this time. And then I'll be like, who is there? Look around you. Go into that. See it in your eyes. See it in the other person's eyes. What did you learn? What did you gain? And I'll have them go to that specific moment. And remember, the brain doesn't know whether it's real or not. It doesn't know whether it's past or right now. And so they go to that moment, and I have them go to the moment, and I have them find the learnings, and I have them find the gifts. What did you gain? What did you learn from this moment? What did this trauma teach you? And what they do is they can see it from their eyes, and they can see it from maybe the person that did its eyes. And who knows, maybe their breakthrough in that moment is they realize, holy shit, when I look around from everybody's perspective, everybody was just trying to protect someone they love. And then they release the negative emotion towards this trauma. Their whole life they thought this person did it to me, this person did it to me, this person did it to me. But then they see it in everyone's eyes, and they realize that person was just trying to protect someone they love, and their whole fucking life changes. And so if you get enough learnings, and they share the learnings, I'll have them share the learnings, and I'll say, where's the emotion? And if they found enough learnings, they'll say the emotion isn't there. And they just obliterated all the anger up until their present day. Does that make sense? I know it's really weird.
Absolutely. We're both students of that whole thought process.
Yeah.
Anthony with Training Camp for the Soul, myself with the Enlifted Coaches Program, that idea of rewriting the script and our own stories. So did you go through that matrix therapy yourself? Did you go through that experience? And if so, can you pull out that moment that when you're first experiencing it, and how did you rewrite it for yourself?
Yeah, great question. I'm going to sound like a whack job, but I don't care. And so what they also teach us, right? is as you go back into these moments and your unconscious mind flashes something, right? And it says, it's this, it's that, it's this, right? Whether it's real or whether it's not, we'll never know. But if it obliterates the negative emotion, it works, right? And so we're not here to say, is this really true? I'll never, I won't battle with myself. Is this true? Did I really go there? But as long as the emotion fades, it works. And so for me, I was in a training and my girlfriend was actually in the training as well. And we went in separate rooms to do our timeline therapy. And remember a few things. The more personal development you do, the easier it is for you to hide your shit. And so the more you know about the brain, it's easier for you to hide your shit and think you're perfect and you have nothing, no breakthroughs left. I'm fucking perfect, which is total bullshit. And so I'm aware of that, but also the conscious mind trying to say, no, it's bullshit, blah, 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 blah. So I laid down and they had some music on and my person was taking me through this process. And they were like, I want you to go to the earliest moment that you experience anger. And I went to a moment in this lifetime. Maybe I was like 3 or 4 years old. And he's like, get the learnings and like hover above the moment. I'm getting the learnings. And he goes, is the emotion still there? And I said, yes. And if the emotion's still there, there may be an earlier moment. And so he said, unconscious mind, is there an earlier moment? Because you can also acquire trauma from being in the womb, from the stress that your mom was going through. You can acquire trauma through that. But if you believe in it, which I do, is you can have past life trauma as well that you bring into this lifetime. And so he was like, go to an earlier moment. And out of nowhere, with certainty, because I surrendered, my unconscious mind was like 2 to 3 lifetimes ago. And he's like, where are you? And I remember I was sitting in a box and I had legs. It was pretty cool. I had legs and a full body and I was handcuffed and I was in a suit. And I was alone. And I felt as I was angry, like someone had left me and they left me alone and they deserted me. And he was like, what are the learnings? Like, get the learnings. And the common theme was like, I speak truth. They put me here because I spoke my message and they didn't like it. And they put me here and blah, 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 blah. And he's like, get the learnings. And I got the learnings. And he's like, is the emotion still there? And I said, yes. And he goes, what was the earlier moment that you experienced anger? And all of a sudden, no bullshit, all of a sudden I'm laying on the floor. My whole body lights up and my mouth goes, 7 lifetimes. And he goes, where were you? And no joke, I started bawling my eyes out. And I'm standing. And by the way, like with this process, you're not supposed to go into the moment. They don't want you to relive the trauma. You just want to hover over it and kind of be like a bird's eye view. I went into this moment where I looked to my left and they're rolling the stone over where they buried Jesus. And I'm screaming and I'm going, no, I was so pissed off. And on the floor, I'm bawling my eyes out. And he goes, where are you? What's going on? And by the way, your brain doesn't know where you are, whether it's real or not. And he goes, what's the learnings? And I go, I speak my truth. I'll always speak my truth. I'll be back. I'll be back. And I just was going and going and going. And he goes, is the emotion still there? And I said, no. And he goes, come back to me. And I opened my eyes and my practitioner's like fucking like, what the fuck? Like, dude, you're crazy. And he has goosebumps all over his body. And he's like, dude, he's like, you should have saw how certain you were that it was 7 lifetimes ago. And those were the exact learnings. Like your whole body lit up. You started bawling your eyes out. And it fucking blew my mind because initially when I went to, I was 2, 3 years old, right? And then my mind goes, was it a past life? My first instinct was bullshit. No past life. It's fucking bullshit. No way. And then I surrendered and I was like, Nick, just surrender. Like there's something there. And then I surrendered and it came through. But what's even crazier is I went back into the room after I had my experience. I sat down with my girlfriend and I was like, where did you go? And she goes, Nick, when we did sadness, because there's a series of emotions, it's anger, sadness, there's a specific emotion that you have to go in order to release. And she goes, Nick, when I did sadness, I went 2 to 3 lifetimes ago where I left my lover in a town because they had taken him captive. And I ran out of the town and I ran up to the hill and I was looking back at the town where I'd left my lover and I was crying and I was sad. I knew her 2 to 3 past lifetimes ago.
Ha-
And she didn't know my experience, and I didn't know her experience.
First of all, that's the most amazing thing I've ever heard. My mouth is open and I have chills right now. But how do you get to that point to be able to surrender that much? Like, does that take practice of meditation, or like, because I know when I've done this work, you have to be willing to let go and just let the process take you. How did you get to that point where you were willing to just open up fully?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think humans love control. We love it. We love control. We love being in control. And so, like you said, I think it's an art of surrendering, an art of letting go. That's why, I can tell some of my students to start meditating. They're like, it doesn't work. I'm like, you haven't fucking done it enough to be able to let go and just chill and just whatever comes to your mind, right? But like, it's trusting that first flash and that first thought or that first thing that your mind says, go with it. Like, go with it. It's going to be very, very short. It's going to be like, bam, and your conscious mind is going to go, bullshit, but it's the surrender. And so for me, at first, they took me through this process, and and we were in a room with everybody doing the process, and I couldn't think. Like, there was too much words going on. There was too many people around, and so I told him, I was like, can we go in the hallway and like where no one is? And he was like, yeah. And so I went in a quiet spot. That helped me. I went in a quiet spot. And he also put down music that helped me get into like a trance and kind of like a surrender. But I would say it is a muscle. But that's the thing, is a lot of the times people have this wall up because they don't want a part of themselves to die. Imagine going 40 years, or imagine going 12 lifetimes believing something and then someone shatters it. That's hard. And so I think it's a practice of surrendering, and how people can do that is being quiet more. I think being quiet more and going into meditation. And by the way, my friends, there is no right or wrong way to meditate. It's just you do. Just try to slow down your brain. Just take deep breaths. Just try to go into la la land, right? And that's a muscle. It's the same thing with visualization. Is like, people are like, I can't visualize. Well, don't think of a blue tree. You just thought of a blue tree, didn't you? Because I told you not to do it, but you fucking did it anyway, right? So you can visualize, it's there, but it's the repetition and it's the muscle. So I hope that helped. One of the things that I do that helps me with surrendering is I go do float tanks. I go blast off and float therapy, where I sit in the pod in the darkness with the music, and they take off all your sensories. You guys know what I'm talking about, the float tanks?
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And so I do that, and that helps me like let go and surrender, especially with all the stimulation we have with COVID and the fucking shutdowns and politics and news. Like, we're so stimulated. And so it's so powerful to just sensory deprivation, right? Is to take all your sensories off and go float in a tank. But some people won't do it because they're scared to be alone with themselves. It's also a lie. A lot of people won't go into psychedelic mushrooms or magic mushrooms because they're scared to be with their own demons and scared to do the work.
Like,
I took it on a whole fucking left.
No, yeah, listen.
That was beautiful, by the way.
I'm thinking, going back to the beginning of the episode, I want to send this to Don LaFontaine to do the trailer for that whole In a World where Nick Santonastasso goes
12 lifetimes ago.
12 lifetimes ago he meets Jesus Christ. Like, I'm already visualizing what this fucking thing is going to be. That's fucking tremendous. I need to make sure that I give you an opportunity to talk quickly about your working with entrepreneurs, because a lot of the work that you do is working with entrepreneurs and making sure that you're helping them celebrate things in their life. You're helping them be the best versions of themselves that they can possibly be. So I'll give you a quick opportunity to tell us a little bit about your work with entrepreneurs right now.
Yeah. So I'm in the process of shifting my energy towards like who do I want to work with, because it's one thing to receive money to work with people, but it's another thing to really enjoy the people that you're working with. And I thought, well, who am I? Well, I'm a 6- and 7-figure entrepreneur, 2 companies about to be 7 figures. And so I was like, I can help these people. And so I work with 6- and 7-figure entrepreneurs, but I do the unconscious level stuff, because the majority of things that are holding us back are unconscious. We don't see them. And so I'm diving in and unraveling their traumas, unraveling their beliefs, unraveling the things that are no longer serving them. And then I'm helping them rewire, unrewire, and rewire their brain through like neuroplasticity. And so right now I'm on a campaign, and this isn't a campaign that I need votes on. This is a campaign on I'm helping 6- and 7-figure entrepreneurs become superhuman by really taking control of their mind. By rewriting things, obliterating negative emotions, traumas, rewriting their stories, all of that different stuff. I'm helping 6- and 7-figure entrepreneurs unwire and rewire their brain so they can become the person that can achieve and sustain the success. And so we have an event coming up that you can just put some details, but we have an event coming up where you get to spend 2 days with me. It's going to be like 8 hours a day, full immersion of just fucking Nick going hard, unraveling your brain and doing the hard work that most people won't. But that's the thing is, most people think it's the millions of dollars that is the cool thing, but it's actually the person you become in the pursuit of it, right? And you need to become a specific person to not only achieve the wealth, but to sustain it in all areas, whether that's your body, your mind, your relationships, and your wealth. And I've also realized that most entrepreneurs, they neglect one area or another, whether they go all in on business and then the relationship at home fades, or they go all in on their business and their health fades. And so I just want to create superhuman entrepreneurs that are well-rounded, that have an amazing unconscious mind that serves them whenever they need it.
That's tremendous. Before I turn it over to Anthony to ask his final question, my last question would be, dude, I see you on Instagram. You're throwing weight around in the gym. You're fucking on skateboards. You're all over the fucking place. I need to ask this because I wondered it, so I'll fucking throw it out there. You went in a weird direction. How do you fucking protect your junk, dude? How do you what's the strategy there?
Yeah. So that's a great question. So people, you can't see it from here, but my quads elevate me just enough.
Okay.
So I have about like 4 or 5 inches of quad muscle so like when I stand up, I'm elevated, but I also wear compression shorts a lot to keep my gonads up.
There we go.
And so that's how I do it. That's a great question.
It's either that or he has just iron balls.
Yeah, I was going to say, my God, your balls must be like truly balls made of steel.
Yeah.
Brother, any final questions?
Yeah, so the last question that we love to ask all of our guests is if there's one thing that you could tell our audience that they can do starting tomorrow, what would that thing be to maybe just kickstart their life off, get them off in the right direction?
Yeah. It's a great question. I would say the first thing you need to do is get extremely clear on what you want, because if you don't know what you want, you're just going to fucking wander through life. And most people are going around asking too broad. And the brain is always going to use the path of least resistance. So you can say, I can ask you, what do you want? You say, I want more money. Here's a fucking $1. Or I want to lose weight. Okay, go take a shit. You'll lose 2 pounds. Like, let's get clear on what we want. And so, for example, I know exactly I want to be 8 to 10% body fat. I want to have this amount of money in my bank account. I want to have this house here and this house there. I want this car. I want this amount of people on my team. I want this amount of people in my inner circle. I want this amount of people on my event. I'm extremely clear, because if you're extremely clear, the RAS, your reticular activating system, you can view your goals so clearly that your brain's going to pick up on the networks, the resources, and the opportunities that are going to help you get there quicker. But if you're focused on the wrong shit, you're going to miss all the opportunities that are right in front of you. And so I'd say the first step is, what do you want, and get extremely clear. That's what I'd say.
Awesome. Let's go. Nick, where can the Building Men audience find you?
Yeah, you can find me, my OnlyFans. No, I'm just kidding. You can find me on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. If you type in Nick Santo, I'm the guy with no legs, one arm with a bunch of tattoos. There's not many of me running around, so you'll find me.
To find Building Men, building.men on Instagram, buildingmen.io is our website. BuildingMenCoach@gmail.com. I want to thank our sponsors, Become Stronger Industries and Finish the Race Apparel. We have a 4-day, 3-night event called the Hero's Journey in Lake Tahoe, California, April 28th through May 1st. A badass 4-day adventure for men. This was my favorite interview so far. We're on 109 episodes, and by far my favorite, especially that you're a fucking Jersey guy. Badass motherfucker. Dude, without anything else, just your personality. It was amazing. We love being on this journey. We will do whatever we can to support you on your own journey as well. Likewise, if there's any time I can come in and serve your men as well, I'll be there to kick them in the ass with my non-existent leg. Let's go. Absolutely. Building Men audience, go a step further than you thought you can go. We'll see you next time.